Welcome to another episode of Altitude Advantage. I am your host and team reporter, Elisa Hernandez. Across the table, we have our lead writer on DenverBroncos.com, Aric DiLalla. Minicamp is in the books, and this episode, we're going to talk about a few things, the takeaways from there, the newest addition, J.K. Dobbins, and just our final thoughts before training camp. But we're going to kick it off with Sean Payton after the conclusion of minicamp practice.
I would say the most important thing we do is lift, change our bodies, run, condition. We'll have plenty of time for the football.
Kicking it off to you, your first takeaways, just initial thoughts from what the past couple weeks have looked like.
I think one is that Sean has a very particular way he likes to run an off-season program, and it's based on what he learned from Bill Parcells more than 2 decades ago now, right? And a lot of that is based on the off-season program being about running and lifting and getting your bodies ready for football. But the football doesn't come immediately. And so it does seem like, based on the last 2 years, from an injury standpoint, knock on wood, that continues. But the Broncos have been healthy. They figured out, it wasn't just that they were owner and CEO Greg Penner has talked about this. It wasn't like they were near the middle the last few years. It's that, they were toward the bottom for a while in terms of injuries. And so the fact that the Broncos are now healthier, they figured things out, that's where it starts and ends to some degree for me, is that you're just getting guys ready for a season. We know Sean Payton plays guys in the preseason. He calluses them. We know all that. It gets you ready for the season. So that's kind of big picture what I think this offseason was about, and it feels successful from that standpoint. Sean Payton said on Thursday that with the exception of receiver A.T. Perry, everybody should be ready to go right away for the start of training camp. He was asked specifically about Devon Vele, who did not practice the last 3 days, said he'll be ready to go, full go for the start of training camp. So that's about as much as you can ask for a team. At least I think when you look at some individual guys that stood out, I mean, we can talk about Bo Nix taking that next step, feeling more comfortable. Sean Payton said he's playing faster. Pat Bryant, a rookie, has really stood out to me. I think he's made some plays in traffic, and Sean Payton he asked me yesterday, I asked him a question about Pat Bryant, and he said, do you like what you see? I like what I see, and I agree, so we're in alignment there. Troy Franklin had a chance to catch up with him, and that article will be coming on DenverBroncos.com. A little plug there for people listening.
Gotta plug it in.
But, I think he's set to maybe have an explosive year. From a pass rush standpoint, I think Nick Bonito, Jonathan Cooper, Zach Allen, like those guys, they've been noticeable out there. You talked about the rookies a lot, right, over the last few weeks, and guys like Savion Jones, Q Robinson, I think you see them. We'll get to Dobbins, but R.J. Harvey, I think, has looked the part at running back. So I think right now it's about individual guys kind of flashing. Obviously, everything to some degree, in my mind at least, like goes back to Bo Nix and what he's going to be. And we hear from a leadership standpoint, an on-field performance standpoint, that he's ready to take that step. So I think as we wrap up the off-season program, those are kind of the things that stand out to me as what's been important, and just a little taste before we get to training camp.
Yeah, and Bo Nix is one of those guys that, of course, everyone's really excited to see how year 2 plays out. And all the coaches have said it. It's hard to really evaluate during this time because they're not in pads, and you're kind of just getting the first kind of look at these guys coming back. But Sean Payton spoke about Bo Nix in particular, and just saying like he's starting to play, he's less hesitant, and he's really kind of playing fast and with more confidence. And that really strikes me as interesting because he came in with that kind of mentality. Like from week 1, all the guys were like, the way he commanded the huddle, it was like, whoa, was this a rookie here? Like, we got our quarterback. And so the fact that that's going to level up even more, I think is very telling for what this team is capable of, and knowing the leadership that they have, knowing that their QB is in place.
Yeah, and Sean Payton mentioned he's still avoiding sacks. Obviously, you're not hitting the quarterback, right? But you can
That's
tell.
a no-no right
you
now.
can tell on tape if it's a sack or not. And I think even I just mentioned that like Zach Allen, Bonito, Jonathan Cooper have been getting after the quarterback. That's true, but it's also hard to tell like what really would have been a sack because Bo's so good at avoiding them. He's avoided turnovers for the most part. The few that we've seen while we've been out there have not necessarily been his fault. They've been, off a receiver's hands or something like that. And so those things give you encouragement about this year. And then I think the fact that I just mentioned like 3 different receivers of Pat Bryant, Troy Franklin, Cortland Sutton, I'm like, these guys look good. Well, guess what the common thread is there? It's probably Bo Nix throwing him the football. And,
Yeah.
And there was a play on Thursday, where he stepped up. He kind of maneuvered through the pocket, found Troy Franklin on an impressive strike. He just zipped it in there. And, there's things that make me think he's ready to take that next step. And you talk to different guys, and they all feel like they're in agreement there. And, there's a lot more to it than just Bo Nix, right? Like, how does this pass rush, how does this defense replicate things? What does special teams look like? How's the run game get going? But I do think there's this element of, and you saw a quote in it in the Denver Post a week or so ago, that like, this is Bo Nix's team, and to some degree they're going to go as far as Bo takes them. And so if you're a Broncos fan, I think get excited about what Bo's going to bring in year two based on what we've seen in the offseason program.
It's really nice to kind of see the building blocks getting put into place, right? It was the draft, then it was free agency, then it was the draft, and then you're kind of wondering what the big picture is going to look like. And now we got a taste of it, obviously, with OTAs and minicamp. And with the newest additions that we have, the biggest thing that we were talking about was the running back room and kind of how is that going to look next season. And RJ Harvey looks great, and Jaleel and, all those guys are really kind of couldn't put in the work to figure out the rotation of what this is going to be. And then, bam, you get J.K. Dobbins, to come to this team. And that, I think, was a really big pickup. And defensive coordinator Vance Joseph and J.K. Dobbins spoke on him coming to the Broncos. Let's take a listen.
Well, he's a real runner. Playing him last year, I thought he was one of the best backs we saw. His quickness, his power he plays with, his intelligence on third downs. He's a three-down back, so that makes it difficult. This guy, one-on-one, he was a tough tackle for us. So I'm happy he's a Bronco.
It feels great. It feels comfortable. It feels amazing, really, because I think I'm a leader, like a natural-born leader, so just knowing faces, being able to be myself, not having any timidness about me, about my personality, because I think I'm a big personality sometimes, and so that definitely helps. And so hopefully I can bring some energy and all that to the team.
So I'm going to steal a line from one of the stories you wrote on Broncos.com.
Okay.
You said, a year ago, Dobbins carried the ball 195 times for a career best 905 yards and 9 touchdowns in 13 games. He also caught 32 passes for 153 yards. He wants to bring energy to the team. I want him to bring all of that.
Right. Yeah, I think it was interesting. Sean Payton was asked about, and it's clear J.K. Dobbins wants to bring that leadership. He's a veteran player. Sean Payton was asked about that. And he said, we'll see about all that. Like, we want good football players in the locker room. And there's definitely kind of an on-field element to this. Not kind of, there just is. Like, he's a really good football player when he's been able to stay healthy. And he talked about, pretty honestly, pretty transparently about the struggles he's gone through. He's dealt with an Achilles injury. He's dealt with an ACL that have kept him out basically 2 seasons. I believe 21 and 23 are the ones that he missed. But he said, I don't know how to lay down. I don't know how to back down. Can't give up. And he just keeps coming back. And each time he does, he's stayed explosive. He's stayed a playmaker. I mean, last year in L.A., even though he ended up missing some time, he early in the year was leading the league in yards per carry, in yards. You talk about, I saw some advanced statistics of, you look at guys, he was, I think, 3rd or 4th in the NFL in terms of carries that went for 10-plus yards, the percentage of his carries that did that. You look at, he was able to have these high yard per carry numbers despite, not having a lot of carries, where I think he was among backs who got contacted within 2 yards of the line of scrimmage. So he's getting these yards per carry despite getting hit early. And so I think, kind of getting away from the statistics, I think big picture, it's, hey, this is a pretty good offensive line, right? We know that this offensive line was among the best in the league. And so if they can give him space, give him an extra yard before he gets hit, and then, as Sean Payton said, have that little extra spaghetti sauce when everything's blocked up right to get the expected yardage and then the extra yardage, he could be a guy, I think, that could really contribute for the Broncos. And again, you got to stay healthy, but I feel like whatever you get is great. Like, obviously, knock on wood, he stays healthy for 17 games. But even if you say, okay, we're going to, manage his carries, or going to split the work with other backs, like, whatever burst you can get is going to only help this offense. It increases the level of competition. We heard Vance talk about how difficult he is for a defense to contain. Certainly that was the case when Dobbins played the Broncos. For a guy his size, he doesn't go down at first contact. He's got that breakaway type speed that, I think the Broncos could use in the run game. And while Sean Payton said, hey, don't start counting running backs yet and don't start trying to figure out who the rotation is going to be.
Yeah.
I do think you add a veteran, a proven guy like that who finished second in the comeback player of the year standings a year ago, like him and RJ Harvey, at least as two of the running backs, feels
like feels a solid 1-2 punch there.
And again, we'll see how it all works out, but like we know the Broncos wanted to add to the running back room, and those are two really solid additions, especially based on the way RJ Harvey has looked.
Yeah.
We heard Garrett Bowles talk about him having the speed, and you forget he's a rookie the way he's been playing at minicamp and in OTAs. But yeah, I think Dobbins, to me, it feels like a low risk, high reward sort of deal. Like he's proven that when he's out there, he's a dynamic player. And so you hope that the Broncos medical staff, that again, knock on wood, they've been really good the last 2 years at keeping guys on the field. And so, can you kind of have some of that go for Dobbins and you find a plan that works and keeps him on the field? Because when he's out there, he can definitely he's another one of those playmakers that can help Bo Nix in this offense. And I asked Sean, kind of one final point there for me is I asked Sean, like, how does Bo Nix get better in the red zone? He said, well, one of the things is it helps when you run the ball down there.
He said that last season, I believe.
Yeah. And so you add Harvey, you add Dobbins, and then the rest of the guys, as you know, Estime, Bidet, like Watson, Jaleel, of course, like a lot of guys there that are going to be battling as well. It feels like that room has gotten stronger over the offseason.
No, I agree with that. And you brought up a good point just about the health aspect. And Dobbins was very honest and candid about it when he spoke to the media. He said, one of the other reasons that I came here, aside from the great coaching, is the health staff that is here. And he's like, they told me, like, we're one of the least injured teams in the NFL, and that's somebody that I want. Like, you're gonna not only coach me right, but you're also gonna make sure that my body is right. And one thing that Sean Payton mentioned on the last day of minicamp was like, it's the program. We're always selling the program. And it's like, that's part of it, knowing that you're going to come here and get coached by some of the best. You're going to be treated by the best. So you're going to be fed the best. Like everything is just going to be the best. Like you want guys to do that. And now you're starting to become and shift that destination program where you're like, guys want to come here and play because they like Bo, because they see and they know what Sean Payton can do. They know what this team is building. He mentioned the fan base and just being excited to be in front of Broncos country. He obviously got a taste of it last season playing for the Chargers. And just like the relationships that he has already, I asked him about the familiarity that he has with this team. And he specifically talked about, Cooper and some of these other guys. Like he's like, yeah, like we have the Ohio State connections. We have this, we have that. We've talked all the time. In my process here, like just having those relationships, he said it. He's like, it feels great and it feels comfortable. And I think when you have some familiarity, it's like you don't start exactly from scratch. And so you're able to go into that running back room and be yourself. And he said that's one of the favorite things that he liked was just the running back room and what he's able to bring to it. Yeah,
you talk about adding to that running back room, and I know a lot of people are thinking, well, what does this mean for RJ Harvey? I don't think it means anything bad for RJ Harvey, right? Like J.K. Dobbins has talked about, I'm going to help him. He's going to help me. It feels like, as you mentioned earlier, could be a really good 1-2 punch. We know coming out of college that backs sometimes struggle or have to learn how to pass protect. So maybe that's an area where J.K. Dobbins can give this Broncos offense maybe a little assurance there. But it feels to me more like a good pairing as opposed to, any sort of, some people are like, oh, well, does this mean that they aren't happy with what RJ? No, it doesn't have anything to do with that.
My favorite is that you move your thumbs because
they're tweeting. They're tweeting.
Hot takes.
So yeah, that stands out to me. And the other thing, I think big picture, you talked about selling the program is someone asked a good question the other day where, hey, if you don't draft this well over the last couple years like you have, and you haven't built this foundation, like, do you sign a guy like J.K. Dobbins and obviously reportedly a 1-year deal? Yeah. You bring him in, and Sean Payton did acknowledge to some degree when you build a team through the draft, but then you supplement in free agency. And when you can supplement with a guy like a J.K. Dobbins or a Dre Greenlaw or Talanoa Hufanga or Evan Ingram, like that matters.
Yeah.
But if you're a team that doesn't have a strong core and you're not ready to compete, like if this team didn't have division aspirations or more, which we know they do because they've laid that out.
Yep.
Like if this team looked like it was going to win 2, 3, 4 games, maybe you're not like maybe
as
you don't
aggressive, right?
Right, or maybe you don't choose to spend money in free agency that same way. And so I think the fact that, like, I was talking about, you don't want to win the offseason. You don't want to lose the offseason either, right? But, like, you want to win it in September and October, et cetera, et cetera. But, like, I think it's hard to look at a team that had a better offseason than the Broncos just because they've added all this talent. But part of that is because they've drafted well, they've established this core. And without doing that, maybe you don't add some of these pieces. So it all fits together, it all works together. And now you, like you mentioned, have added another talented guy in J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, and before we close it out here, you talked about those key additions, and it's just the way the coaching staff has mentioned the guys they're looking for. Yes, they want good football players, but you said it earlier, they want good guys that are going to be in the locker room. And when you added the Dre Greenlaws and Talanoa Hufangas and the Evan Ingrams, you have DJ Jones, who has played with a good portion of them. Brandon Jones mentioned his relationship with Talanoa Hufanga, and I believe he mentioned that, like, they have some familiarities in coaching and things like that. But he's like, you would think that I have known him my whole life, just the way that we've been able to pick up and talk to each other and communicate on the field. And I feel like when you have those things, that's one of the biggest that stuck out to me, especially through this offseason program, is just the way the guys are just buying in, not only to the program, not only into Sean Payton, but into each other and understanding what Bo can bring to the table, what this defense brings to the table. Dobbins had mentioned as well, like, the first thing he said when he was asked, like, what was one of the reasons you came here? So excited! I'm so excited! I'm running as fast as JK.
Taking us out of it.
He mentioned, like, the defense is really good, and he was like super good. Like, he really wanted to emphasize that. And when you start seeing that these free agents are having so many reasons for coming here, you start stepping back and looking at the full picture of what the Broncos have done. And we've been on the ground covering it, and so we're kind of just placing all the, steps in front of us. But now we're looking, wow, like, we've gone very, very far ahead since this time last season.
Yeah, and it was a 10-win team that made the playoffs, right? And however briefly, like, did lead on the road in Buffalo. But I think I was thinking back the other day to, I think it was George Payton or Sean Payton. I can't remember which one of them said it at the end of your press conference when they were like, we need to have a good offseason. Like, it's critical that now we build on what we did, and you can't just stay stagnant, and you can't stay where you were, like, to take the next step and compete with the Chiefs. And owner and CEO Greg Penner laid it out in January and said, hey, one of our goals is to compete for the division. And Sean Payton said it in Buffalo. After that loss, we got to find a way to have these games at home. And the way you do that is you win the division. And so that's been the goal since the end of last year, the end of last season. And I think that when you look back at it, like you mentioned, I think you can say they had a good offseason, the way that they were able to, supplement this roster in free agency. And then you go on in the draft, and we'll see how it all pans out on Sundays. But at least so far, like, a lot of these guys, whether it's Harvey or, Pat Bryant or Savion Jones or Q Robinson or, even the punter, Jeremy Crawshaw, my guy.
That's your guy.
We hear about how smart Jahdae Barron is and how he's able to, put himself in this defense in different roles. Like, based on what we've seen so far, it feels like they've made some really strong additions. So I think the next step is, obviously, it takes some time here. Then you come back for training camp, and there's a nice balance right now of internal confidence, I think, of like, hey, we know what we can do. We're more comfortable than a year ago. Mm-hmm. But they're also, we've talked about it all offseason, like, you got to put the work in too, right? And it's clear, based on the 3-day minicamp, based on the offseason program, that, like, that work is going along with it. And Sean Payton talked about it the other day, that he likes where this team is from an embracing those expectations while also kind of living up to the work ethic and the work that's required to go with it. So you got to go prove it this summer in training camp. But in terms of the offseason program, I do like where the Broncos stand, and we'll see how it plays out. But it feels like they're ready to take that next step. Yeah,
you had mentioned it in, I believe, like a podcast ago, where you said, like, there's not as many question marks as there was before, and everything's starting to look more complete. And to your point about what Sean Payton said was, the guys want to be here. Like, they want to be here on their days off. They want to come in and spend time here and work out. And that's one of the things I think plays larger than the X's and O's, right? Because obviously the offseason can bring a numerous amount of storylines for different clubs. And here the storyline is just, they're coming, they're working, they're going to head out. But even when they're out, it's been talked about like Bo having a trip, connecting with his guys. Even JK mentioned it. Like he's already in the chat talking to them, which is great to hear. And it's like the work never stops for them. They're just one continuous motion because they know the bigger picture of what they want, and that's to win the division and make a deep run in the playoffs.
Yeah, and we got a few weeks here, and then we'll really get to work.
More weeks. Why do I have to wait? Why do we have to wait so long?
I know. I am excited for week 1. I'm excited. I'm ready to go.
I thought you were going to say training camp, not week 1.
No, training camp, I understand is necessary. I enjoy like seeing training, but like I'm ready for week 1. We'll get there.
We'll get there. But until then, we have you covered on denverbroncos.com. So make sure you guys head over there for all the latest news and headlines as we gear up for training camp. Until then, make sure you guys comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we will see you next time.